Picture this. It's 10:00 p.m. The rest of the neighborhood is, basically a ghost town. Lights are off, reasonable people are asleep.
Mm-hmm.
But inside your living room, it's a rave without the music. We're talking about a child launching themselves off the sofa armrest like a tiny wrestler, talking at a velocity that just defies physics.
Literally bouncing off the wall.
Yes, literally. And you're just sitting there completely exhausted, staring at the clock, and the thought crosses your mind. There is no way this is just normal kid energy. This feels different.
That is the whirlwind scenario. I think every parent has, touched the edge of that chaos. But when you're living in it every single night,
Right.
it stops being funny and starts being a source of, genuine dread.
Exactly. And that is where the nagging questions start. Is this just a spirited personality? Is it a phase? Or is this hyperactivity? Is there something actually, wiring them this way?
That distinction between high energy and clinical hyperactivity, that is the core anxiety we're going to unpack today. Because when you're in the thick of it, the line is incredibly blurry.
So to help us navigate this, we're doing a deep dive into a guide. It's titled, Why is My Child Hyperactive? Common Causes Parents Should Know.
It comes from DACE Medical Consulting.
Right. Written by Oki Ikpekbi and reviewed by Dr. Nanena Chiloli. And I want to set the stage here.
Yeah.
I read through this report, and our mission today isn't to diagnose anyone's kid through their AirPods.
No, please do not use a podcast for a diagnosis. The goal here is to give you the under-the-hood look.
Yes.
We want to explain the biology, the environmental factors, and the management strategies so you can look at that whirlwind in your living room and actually understand the mechanics of what's happening.
Right. We want to move from my kid is annoying me to my kid's dopamine receptors are hunting for stimulation.
Exactly. Understanding the mechanism changes the empathy.
So let's start with the definition. I think we toss the word hyperactive around way too loosely. I mean, I have a double espresso and I say I'm hyperactive.
It's become a catch-all term, which is a problem. In a clinical or developmental sense, hyperactivity is very specific. It isn't just having energy. You have to remember, the baseline for a toddler or preschooler is chaos machine. If they're awake, they are moving. That is developmentally normal.
So is the actual threshold.
Yeah.
The source defines it as a persistent pattern of unusually high activity, restlessness, or impulsivity.
And I want you to mentally underline that word persistent. It's not just one wild Tuesday night because grandma came over and brought chocolate.
Right.
It's a baseline state of being.
And to make that call, the guide suggests we look at 3 specific dimensions: intensity, frequency, and impact. I really like this framework because it removes the emotion and, makes it about data.
It does. Let's look at intensity. If you observe 10 other children of the exact same age on a playground, is your child's activity level turned up to an 11 while everyone else is at a 6?
Is it disproportionate?
Exactly, to the situation.
And then frequency. Is this
Right.
happening all the time or just when they're overtired? But the big one for me was impact.
Impact is the tipping point. Is this behavior actually interfering with their life? Is it making learning difficult?
Yeah.
Is it straining relationships with friends because maybe they play too rough and don't notice social cues? Is it disrupting family life to the point where you just can't go to a restaurant?
Right. If the behavior is just annoying, that's one thing. If it's impairing, that's completely another. And the source lists some specific signs that go beyond just, running around.
Yeah.
The verbal aspect really stood out to me.
Yes, the motor mouth.
Yeah.
Excessive talking, frequently interrupting others, blurting out answers before the question is even finished.
Oh.
It's not just physical restlessness, it's a cognitive restlessness. It's like a lack of a filter.
It's an inability to inhibit that impulse to speak.
Precisely. And that links to the physical signs too: difficulty sitting still,
Yeah.
or the constant movement in inappropriate contexts.
Like climbing the bookshelf during a quiet dinner.
Exactly. Or, and this is a subtle one, the source highlights, difficulty calming down.
That transition from high to low.
Right. Most kids, after running around the park, can eventually downshift. A hyperactive child might struggle immensely to switch gears. Their engine is just stuck on high.
No. Obviously, the elephant in the room here is ADHD.
Which is fair because hyperactivity is a primary symptom of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But the source is careful to point out, and this is crucial, that hyperactivity is a symptom, not a diagnosis in itself.
Okay.
You see it in autism spectrum disorder, you can see it in sensory processing issues, and sometimes you see it as just a standalone temperament trait.
Okay, so we know what it looks like. Now I want to get to the why. I found this section of the source just fascinating because it really absolves parents of a lot of guilt.
It really does.
There's this pervasive idea that hyperactivity is the result of modern life or bad discipline, but the research points overwhelmingly to biology.
And if there is one takeaway for parents carrying that guilt, it's this. Genetics play a massive role. The source cites that genetics account for about 70% of the differences in hyperactive behavior among children.
70%. That is huge. That's nearly 3/4 of the equation just written into the code before the kid is even born.
It essentially means if a child is hyperactive, there is a very, very strong chance it's because of the DNA they inherited. If you look at the family tree parents, uncles, grandparents, you'll likely find similar traits.
The source actually got pretty technical here, which I loved. It mentioned the specific gene, Litrophyllin 3 or LPHN3.
Yes, the LPHN3 gene. This is where the science gets really interesting. This gene is involved in cell adhesion and synaptic signaling.
Okay, break that down for us. What does cell adhesion mean for a 6-year-old running in circles?
Think of it like the brain's internal wiring or its traffic signals. This gene helps determine how effectively brain cells talk to each other about activity and attention. So if you have a variant of this gene, the signaling is different. The stop light might be a bit dim or the go light might just be stuck on green.
So it is quite literally the hardware. And that leads directly into the brain chemistry side of things. You can't talk about hyperactivity without talking about dopamine.
Dopamine is the star of the show here. We usually think of it as the pleasure chemical, right?
Right, like when you eat chocolate or get a like on Instagram.
Exactly. But in the context of executive function, dopamine is a regulator. It controls motivation, focus, and reward.
So in a neurotypical brain, dopamine says, hey, sit still and listen to this story, and you'll feel good about it.
Precisely. It provides the staying power. In many hyperactive children, that dopamine transmission is inefficient. The baseline levels might be lower, or the receptors just aren't catching it as well.
And this was the aha moment for me reading the source. The hyperactivity isn't just random energy. It's a subconscious attempt to fix that deficit.
Yes. The running, the jumping, the risk-taking, all of that stimulates the brain. It forces a release of dopamine and norepinephrine. Wow.
The child isn't trying to be difficult. Their brain is starving for stimulation, and physical activity is the fastest way to get fed.
That reframes the entire behavior. They are self-medicating with movement.
Precisely.
The source also mentioned that structurally, the parts of the brain that control executive function, the prefrontal cortex, they might develop a little differently.
Right. These are the braking systems of the brain. Inhibition, planning, emotional regulation. In hyperactive kids, these areas might mature a bit slower.
So you have a Ferrari engine that drive for stimulation with bicycle brakes.
That's a great way to put it.
Before we move off biology, we should probably mention the medical lookalikes, because sometimes it's not brain wiring at all.
And this is why you need a doctor, not just a blog post. Things like hyperthyroidism, an overactive thyroid, can speed up the body's metabolism and cause jitters and restlessness that look exactly like ADHD.
Or a history of head injuries, even.
For sure.
Yeah.
You have to rule out the mechanical issues before you assume it's neurodevelopmental. Okay, so we've established that the hardware, the genetics and biology, is the main driver. But the source makes it clear we can't ignore the nurture side. The environment interacts with those genes.
Absolutely. The genes might load the gun, but the environment can pull the trigger. And interestingly, the source tracks this all the way back to before the child is even born.
The prenatal influences. This is a pretty sobering list.
It is. The CDC data they cite links things like maternal smoking, alcohol consumption, and exposure to environmental toxins.
Like lead or pesticides.
Yes, during pregnancy, to higher rates of hyperactivity.
And birth circumstances too, right? Premature birth and low birth weight.
Yes. These are considered adverse events that place stress on the developing nervous system. It doesn't guarantee hyperactivity, but it statistically increases the risk that those genetic predispositions will, express themselves.
Now, let's fast forward to the modern living room. We have to talk about screens. Every parent I know is worried about this. Is the iPad breaking my kid's brain? The source takes a nuanced view here.
It does. It avoids the whole screens are evil trap, but it explains the mechanism of harm. High stimulation from screens is linked to restless behavior, but not just because the content is fast. It's about opportunity cost.
It's what they aren't doing while they're staring at the screen.
Exactly. Developing attention control, the ability to sit still and focus, is a muscle. It requires practice. It requires moments of boredom.
Right.
It requires moments where you have to self-regulate because nothing is entertaining you.
So if every free second is filled with high-speed, high-color animation, that muscle just atrophies.
It's like skipping leg day for your brain's attention span. When the screen turns off, the brain doesn't know how to idle. It only knows how to race.
That makes perfect sense. And then there's the home environment itself.
Yeah.
The emotional temperature of the household.
This can create a feedback loop. A chaotic, stressful home can cause anxiety, which can lead to hyperactivity in the child.
And a hyperactive child creates a chaotic, stressful home.
Exactly. If there is parental mental health struggle, family stress, or emotional instability, a child might become hypervigilant. They're constantly on, constantly moving as a coping mechanism for an unpredictable environment.
There was also a demographic note that validates the experience of, well, a lot of boy moms out there.
Yes. ADHD and hyperactivity are identified in boys roughly 2 to 3 times more often than in girls.
Is that biological, or is that just us being bad at spotting it in girls?
It's a mix. Biologically, boys do naturally tend to be more physically energetic on average because of hormonal differences, but a huge part is presentation. Boys often show the hyperactive impulsive presentation, the running, the jumping, the disrupting. You can't ignore it.
The squeaky wheel.
Right. Girls, on the other hand, often present with the inattentive type. They might be daydreaming, zoning out, doodling. They aren't disrupting the class, so they get overlooked.
So a boy flipping a desk gets a referral.
And a girl staring out the window just needs to focus more on her report card.
That is such a critical distinction. Okay, I want to move to what might be my favorite section, busting myths. Because there is so much folk wisdom about hyperactivity that is just flat out wrong.
Oh, the myths run deep.
Public enemy number 1, sugar. The birthday cake effect, I feel like this is ingrained in our cultural DNA.
It is the classic culprit, but here's the reality check. For the vast majority of children, sugar does not cause hyperactivity.
I can hear parents screaming at their speakers right now. You haven't seen my kid after his soda.
I know, but think about the context. When do kids consume massive amounts of sugar?
Parties, holidays.
Birthday parties, holidays, Halloween. It's the excitement, the disruption of routine, the pure interaction that fuels the chaos. The sugar is just a passenger.
However, the source did make a really interesting, nuanced point here. It's not the sugar, but what comes with the sugar.
Yes, the additives. Artificial food colors like red dye #40 and certain preservatives like sodium benzoate. The source notes that for a specific subset of sensitive children, these additives can act almost like a mild neurotoxin.
So it's not the sugar in the candy. It might be the dye making it red.
Potentially, yes. If you have a child who seems reactive to food, looking at dyes is much more scientifically sound than just cutting sugar. But for most kids, sugar isn't the villain.
The second myth is the heavy one, the bad parenting myth.
This is the one we really need to dismantle. Parents often feel, or are made to feel by society, that if they were just stricter or calmer or read more books, their child wouldn't be this way.
You get the dirty looks in the grocery store when your kid is melting down. Control your child.
Exactly. But remember that 70% genetic statistic. You didn't parent your child into having a different dopamine receptor. You didn't parent them into having the LPHN3 gene.
That is such a relief to hear.
It should be. Now, the distinction is parenting helps manage the symptoms. It's not the root cause, but your response to the behavior dictates how manageable it becomes. You didn't break the car, but you are the driver who has to keep it on the road.
So if we've ruled out sugar and we've ruled out I'm a bad parent and we suspect it might be more than just high energy, when do we actually seek help? The source outlines a 3Ps framework that I found incredibly useful.
This framework is the gold standard for knowing when to call a professional. You need to look for behavior that is persistent, pervasive, and problematic.
Let's run through those. Persistent.
Meaning it has lasted more than 6 months. It isn't a reaction to moving houses, a new baby, or a divorce. It's a steady baseline state regardless of life events.
Okay. Pervasive.
This is key. It means it happens in 2 or more settings. If your child is an angel at school but a terror at home, that's usually not clinical hyperactivity.
Right.
That might be a dynamic at home, or maybe they're masking all day and exploding at night. But if they're bouncing off the walls at home, getting in trouble at school, and struggling at soccer practice, that's pervasive. It follows them everywhere.
And the last one, problematic.
Is it causing clear impairment? Are grades dropping not because of intelligence, but because they can't focus? Is the child struggling to keep friends? Is the family stress level at a breaking point?
Yeah.
If you hit those 3, persistent, pervasive, problematic, It is time to get an evaluation.
And the evaluation isn't just a single blood test, is it? You don't just, pee in a cup and get an ADHD diagnosis.
No, and that's important to manage expectations. It's a puzzle piece approach. Doctors gather info from you, from teachers, from the child. They also have to do what are called rule-outs.
Right, checking for those things we mentioned earlier that mimic hyperactivity.
Sleep is a massive one. A child with sleep apnea isn't sleeping well. Adults get lethargic when they lack sleep. Kids get wired.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, their bodies pump out adrenaline and cortisol to stay awake, which looks exactly like hyperactivity.
Or anxiety.
Yes. A child who is highly anxious might be fidgety, unable to focus, constantly moving to self-soothe. If you treat that as ADHD with stimulants, you might actually make the anxiety worse. You have to get the diagnosis right.
Okay, so let's say a parent goes through this and they realize, yes, this is my kid. What's now? The source pivots to support, and the headline here seems to be management, not cure.
Exactly. You aren't trying to cure the child's personality. You are trying to give them tools to navigate a world that often requires sitting still.
And the first tool is routine.
Routine is the external scaffold for a brain that lacks internal structure. Clear times for sleep, meals, activities. Knowing what comes next reduces the anxiety and mental load for these kids. They don't have to guess, so their brain can relax a little.
Communication was another big one. The advice is one step at a time.
This is huge. If you tell a hyperactive child, go upstairs, brush your teeth, put on your pajamas, and pick a book, they probably stop listening after go upstairs.
I think I stop listening after go upstairs sometimes, too.
Fair. But for them, it's genuinely overwhelming. Their working memory just dumps the rest. You have to break it down, go upstairs, wait for them to do it, now brush your teeth. Simple, clear, singular instructions.
And what about the energy itself? Do we just try to bottle it up?
Yeah.
Sit down, sit down, sit down?
No, you're fighting a losing battle. You have to channel it. The source emphasizes a physical outlet. Regular physical activity to release that excess energy is non-negotiable. You cannot expect a high-energy engine to idle all day. Get them into swimming, martial arts, track something that burns that fuel.
And then there's the emotional side. Positive reinforcement.
This is critical because these kids hear no, stop, and don't all day long. Their self-esteem can really take a hit. They start to identify as the bad kid.
Yeah.
You have to catch them being good, reward the desired behaviors, make them feel successful when they do manage to regulate themselves.
And finally, school.
You have to be partners with the teachers. Consistency between home and school is vital so the child isn't navigating two different sets of rules.
I really like how the source wrapped up. It tries to reframe the narrative entirely.
It does. It moves away from seeing this as a flaw.
It calls it a spark.
Yes. High energy, if managed well, is drive. It's alertness. It's enthusiasm. Many successful adults, entrepreneurs, athletes, performers, first responders, are hyperactive.
For sure.
They've just learned to channel that motor into their work or their passions. They often thrive in chaos.
But the source also gives a realistic, long-term outlook. We aren't saying it just disappears.
Right. It notes that the physical restlessness, that often decreases with age. You won't see a 25-year-old running around the dinner table, usually.
Hopefully not.
But the impulsivity, that internal feeling of restlessness, that might stick around, which is why learning those self-regulation strategies early, the routines, the exercise, the coping mechanisms, is so important.
It's about building the toolkit for the future, not just surviving the evening.
Exactly.
This has been such a helpful breakdown. It takes the mystery and, honestly, the shame out of the equation.
That's the hope. Knowledge is the best antidote to that anxiety.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a thought. We talked about how 70% of this is genetic.
Yeah.
It's biological. It's just how the brain is wired. So if this is a natural variation in human brain wiring, a spark as the source calls it, why do we spend so much time trying to, medicate or therapy the child to fit the environment? What if the real challenge for the future isn't fixing the kid, but changing the environments or schools and workplaces to actually harness that energy instead of just trying to suppress it?
That is the million-dollar question. Maybe the world needs a little more of that whirlwind energy.